So when we look up at the night sky through a telescope, right, our entire focus is just completely on the stars.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we track their movements, we measure their light, calculate the distance. It's all about what's out there.
Yeah, we get so consumed by the sheer vastness of the universe that we almost never stop to consider, like the actual glass lens inside the telescope itself.
Right. The very instrument that's making the observation possible just becomes totally invisible to the observer.
Exactly. We simply look right through it, and we assume it's providing this flawless, perfect window into reality.
Which is a huge assumption if you think about it.
It really is. Because we might map out an entire solar system based on a distortion in our own equipment.
Yeah, like if that lens has a microscopic smudge or if the glass is curved at some odd angle.
Right. The whole shape of the galaxy we think we're seeing is fundamentally compromised. And that invisible distortion, like the equipment we use to perceive reality, is exactly what we're getting into today.
It's such a fascinating angle.
We're doing a deep dive into philosopher Abdul Jabbar Al-Waily's 2026 book, Philosophical Solutions, Chapter 1.
Specifically focusing on his central theme, which is psychology and its relationship with philosophy.
Yes, exactly. We're exploring a text that really attempts to bridge that seemingly impossible gap between the abstract thoughts floating inside your head and, well, the physical universe outside of it.
And Al-Waily, he argues that understanding your own mind isn't just some, exercise in self-help or mental health.
Right, it's way bigger than that.
Oh, massively. He says the relationship between psychology and philosophy is literally the ultimate key to unlocking the universe's most profound mysteries.
Like, to understand the cosmos, we first have to understand the tool we are using to perceive it.
Exactly. The mind is the lens.
So if you're listening to this and you ever felt like modern science gives you this massive catalog of the what's and the hows of the universe, but completely misses the why, you are going to love this.
Oh, it's going to resonate deeply. We are going to trace the journey from how you perceive the physical world around you all the way to the literal mechanics of the human soul.
It's wild.
Huh.
But to navigate that journey, we kind of have to first confront the current state of psychology, right?
Yeah, we do. And Al-Waily uses a really specific phrase to describe our modern understanding of the mind. He actually calls psychology a young child.
A young child. I mean, considering the billions of dollars poured into behavioral science and neurobiology today, labeling the entire field as an immature child is it's a bold provocation.
It really is. It feels almost dismissive, right?
Yeah, like we map neural pathways, we treat super complex behavioral disorders, we have entire industries built around cognitive behavioral therapies.
Right. And he's not ignoring that. Al-Waily validates that progress, but he places it in a much broader historical context.
Okay, so how does he contextualize it?
Well, for centuries, the formal study of the human mind was incredibly shallow. It wasn't until the era of Freud and his contemporaries that researchers actually started to, systematically divide the mind into the conscious and the unconscious.
Right, mapping out the territory, basically.
Exactly, categorizing emotions, diagnosing psychological diseases. That era provided a really vital mechanical mapping of human behavior.
But mapping the mechanics is very different from understanding the substance, right? I mean, science is fantastic at categorizing instincts and measuring biological responses.
Oh, for sure. But Al-Waily points out a hard limit to the scientific method. The text relies on this premise that philosophy begins where science ends.
I love that quote. Philosophy begins where science ends.
Because psychology can map the biological instinct to flee from danger, sure. But it takes philosophy to ask, what is the actual fundamental reality of the mind that is experiencing that fear?
And the text uses this really brilliant metaphor to illustrate this, doesn't it?
Yeah, the tree metaphor. Human knowledge is described as this massive tree of sciences.
Okay, so picture a tree.
Right. Everything visible above the surface, the heavy trunks, the sprawling branches, all the leaves that represents scientific facts and empirical data.
So the tangible things.
Yeah.
The stuff we can observe, measure, replicate in a lab.
Exactly. But philosophy operates as the hidden root system underground.
You never actually see the roots.
Right, but they are the foundational structures anchoring the entire tree. They're drawing up the essential nutrients that allow those visible branches of science to grow in the first place.
So without a robust philosophical root system, the scientific branches just wither because they aren't grounded in reality.
Precisely. They lose their fundamental grounding.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here, though. I want to push back on this division a little bit.
Go for it.
In the era of Freud, sure, psychology probably needed philosophical roots because we literally couldn't see inside the skull. But today, we have functional MRI machines.
We do. The tech is incredible.
Right. We can put someone in a scanner, ask them to solve a math problem, and watch the exact regions of their brain metabolize oxygen in real time. Like, we are literally watching the physical mechanism of thought. Doesn't that make the philosophical questioning kind of obsolete?
It's a great point, but, well, observing blood flow in the prefrontal cortex correlates with problem solving, sure. But it doesn't actually explain the subjective experience of understanding mathematics.
Okay, so the what versus the what it feels like.
Exactly. This is the exact trap Al-Waily warns us against. Neuroscience diagnoses the physical brain. It just identifies the biological hardware.
So seeing a neuron fire when you look at a red apple tells us the where and the how of the biological reaction.
But it remains completely silent on the subjective phenomenon of actually experiencing the color red or the abstract concept of what an apple even is.
Ah, so the brain scan is just measuring the physical glass of the telescope lens.
Bingo. It maps the topography of the instrument, but it completely fails to explain the phenomenon of sight itself.
Wow. So without philosophy bridging that gap, our understanding of knowledge, like how we actually know what we know, just remains totally obscure.
Totally in the dark. And recognizing that gap brings us to this massive hurdle in how we interact with the physical world.
Which moves us into epistemology,
Right.
right? The study of knowledge and reality.
Right, because if our perception relies entirely on this unexamined mental lens, how do we know anything outside of ourselves actually exists?
That's the big question. And the text breaks down this historical friction by outlining three major philosophical camps.
Yeah, let's unpack those, because most of us operate as realists in our day-to-day lives.
Right, the realist paradigm. That basically assumes the physical world exists entirely independently of our minds, exactly as we perceive it.
So, like, the coffee cup on your desk possesses the exact shape, color, and solidity you experience, regardless of whether you're looking at it.
It's just there. But then the idealist camp pushes in the exact opposite direction.
Yeah, idealists argue that reality is composed entirely of mental ideas within a general universal mind.
So in that framework, the physical world isn't solid matter at all.
Nope, it functions more like a shared mental projection. We, as individuals, only connect to reality mentally because reality itself is fundamentally mental.
It's like we're all in the matrix.
Kind of, yeah. But the tension between those two, the realists treating the mind as a passive mirror, and the idealists treating reality as a mental projection that leads us to the third group.
The critical thinkers. And this group strikes a really fascinating, but also slightly unsettling balance.
Unsettling is a good word for it. They argue that an external, independent reality definitely does exist.
Okay, so there is stuff out there.
Right, but human beings can never interact with that true reality directly. We only ever experience phenomena.
Okay, break down what a phenomenon is in this context.
A phenomenon is basically a translation. When physical stimuli from the external world interact with our sensory organs, our brain translates that raw data into a user interface we can comprehend.
Oh, wow. So under the critical thinker paradigm, attributes like color, taste, sound, temperature, they don't actually exist in the external physical universe.
They do not. Out in the physical universe, there are just electromagnetic waves bouncing off the surface of your coffee cup.
So that invisible, colorless wave of energy hits your retina, travels down your optic nerve, and your brain basically manufactures the experience of the color red.
Exactly. The redness only exists inside your consciousness.
That is wild to think about. If you remove the psychological instrument of the human mind from the equation, the universe is just a silent, colorless, odorless void of interacting energies.
It's a completely different way to look at reality. And Al-Waily introduces these three distinct paradigms to highlight a profound intellectual gridlock.
Right, because you can't possibly solve this centuries-old debate over the fundamental nature of reality without first rigorously defining the psychological instrument that's doing the perceiving.
It all comes back to the lens.
Yeah, it's like wearing permanently tinted glasses. If you're walking through life analyzing the objects you see, that will never tell you if the world is actually pink, or if your lenses are just altering the light.
You literally have to take the glasses off and study the lenses themselves. You must know the observer to understand the observed.
And what I love is that Al-Waily refuses to just point out the problem. He actually provides a structural solution.
He really does. He introduces this overarching framework designed to explain exactly what the mind is and how it interfaces with external reality.
He calls this theory the unity of intellectual existence.
Yes. the unity of intellectual existence. And this radically shifts the text. We go from a review of historical epistemology right into a groundbreaking theory of the cosmos.
It's a huge pivot.
Mm.
He proposes that the entire universe is not constructed from dead, inert physical matter.
Right. He argues that the fabric of reality is composed entirely of what he calls intellectual particles operating at varying degrees of activity.
And this concept scales down to the absolute foundation of physics.
Yeah.
He actually identifies photons, particles of light, as intellectual atoms.
Let that sink in. Every element of the universe, from a highly complex human brain all the way down to a single grain of sand, possesses a baseline level of intellectual reality.
They're just vibrating at vastly different frequencies of intellectual activity.
Exactly. Framing a photon as an intellectual atom completely reorganizes our understanding of consciousness.
Because usually we assume the mind is made of some, I don't know, ethereal, non-physical soul stuff, right? And the universe is made of cold, dead rock stuff.
Right, which creates an impossible gap. Like, how does the non-physical mind interact with the physical world?
It's the classic mind-body problem.
But Al-Waily's theory just eliminates that gap entirely. The human mind is directly and intimately connected to external reality because the mind and the universe are constructed from the exact same fundamental material.
So you are not an alien observer trapped inside a physical machine peering out at a dead universe. You are literally the universe perceiving itself, utilizing the exact same intellectual particles.
It's beautiful, isn't it? And operating from this unified foundation, the text meticulously details the anatomy of our inner human world.
Okay, so let's break down that anatomy. Al-Waily maps the mind into two primary domains, starting with the conscious mind.
Right. And he defines the conscious mind not as some vague cloud of awareness, but as an active information processing pipeline.
Made up of exactly 5 faculties: sensation, memory, imagination, deduction, and will.
And looking at those 5 faculties as a sequential assembly line really clarifies how an intellectual particle experiences the world.
Walk us through the assembly line.
Okay, the sensation acts as the intake valve, right? It pulls raw data from external intellectual particles into the mind.
Makes sense. Then memory is basically the archival buffer storing that data.
Exactly. Then imagination allows the mind to synthesize and permute the data into new hypothetical scenarios.
So you've taken the raw data, stored it, and now you're playing with it.
Right. And then deduction comes in to apply logical filters to those permutations to find truth.
And finally, will.
Will serves as the output mechanism. It allows the mind to act back upon the universe.
Intake, process, output. That conscious pipeline is highly structured, but that's only half the anatomy.
Right. The second domain is the unconscious, which Al-Waily equates directly with the human soul.
Which he breaks down into 2 driving forces: emotions and instincts.
Yes, emotions ranging from positive states like joy and love to negative ones like anger and hate and instincts. But the relationship he proposes between the two reverses the entire modern biological narrative.
This part blew my mind, because evolutionary biology teaches us that we are biological machines first.
Right, the standard view. We possess a genetic instinct to survive. A threat appears, our brain secretes chemicals, we generate the emotion of fear, and we run.
So the biology produces the feeling.
But Al-Waily completely inverts that causality. In his framework, the unity of intellectual existence, the emotion is the fundamental primary reality.
Wait, so the emotion exists first?
Yes. The emotion exists at the foundational level of those intellectual particles. The physical instinct is merely the biological echo of that pre-existing emotion.
Okay, give us the blushing example, because that really grounded it for me.
It's a great example. We typically view blushing as an involuntary cardiovascular reflex, right? Just a rush of blood to the capillaries in your face.
Just biology doing its thing.
But Al-Waily argues that blushing is simply the physical, instinctual shadow cast by the fundamental emotion of shame.
Oh, wow. So the shame exists first as a reality within the intellectual particles of the soul, and the physical body just resonates with it.
Exactly. And the concept extends way beyond human involuntary reflexes. The text examines an animal building a nest.
Okay, nest building. Science categorizes that as a blind, inherited biological imperative coded into avian DNA.
Right. But Al-Waily argues the primary force driving that behavior is the deep, fundamental emotion of maternity.
The feeling of motherly care is the active intellectual reality.
Yes. Constructing the physical nest is just the instinctual echo of that maternal emotion expressing itself through the physical form. The feeling literally creates the biology.
Elevating emotion to the foundational building block of reality like that. It drastically alters how we view our own internal lives.
It really does. Your feelings are not random chemical glitches in a biological computer.
They're the structural forces of the universe echoing through your physical body.
And connecting the micro level of human emotion to the macro level of the universe forces us to reevaluate these massive abstract concepts we've debated for millennia.
Right, like aesthetics, values, morality. If the mind is composed of the same intellectual particles as the cosmos, our understanding of those things shifts from subjective to objective.
Let's take beauty, for example. We're constantly debating whether it's just a cultural construct.
Yeah, like, do I only find a piece of music beautiful because my society conditioned me to enjoy that specific arrangement of notes? Or is beauty an objective reality woven into the fabric of the universe?
And Al-Waily argues we cannot answer that question without first understanding the psychological instrument perceiving the music.
The lens again.
Always the lens, because the mind and the music are both composed of intellectual particles. Experiencing beauty is not a subjective cultural illusion.
It's a moment of objective resonance between the intellectual particles of the observer and the intellectual particles of the observed.
Exactly, it's a resonance. And by establishing this physics of consciousness, Al-Waily pushes his psychological framework directly into the philosophy of religion and metaphysics.
Because if the entire physical universe consists of these varying intellectual particles, the sum total of all those particles combined forms one singular overarching entity.
Which he refers to as the general mind.
The general mind. And
Yeah.
where do we fit into that?
Well, an individual human mind is basically a highly complex, unique cluster of these intellectual particles temporarily housed within a biological framework.
Okay. And because the mind is a fundamental unit of intellectual existence, Al-Waily deduces that this unique cluster is completely indivisible.
Right. It operates under completely different laws than physical cells, which, constantly die, decay, and decompose.
Physical matter is subject to entropy. It breaks down over time.
But because the mind is constructed from intellectual energy bound together by will and emotion, it doesn't rot. It remains perfectly intact.
So he's using this strict logical framework to provide a philosophical defense for the immortality of the soul.
Exactly. He asserts that when the biological shell eventually fails and decays, that indivisible cluster of intellectual particles that makes up the mind detaches.
And because it's indivisible, it retains all of its archived memories, its highly distinct personality, and its fundamental capacity to feel profound joy or deep sorrow.
The afterlife, in this context, is entirely stripped of its mystical ambiguity.
It just becomes the logical physics of how a cluster of intellectual particles operates once the decaying biological hardware is removed.
Right. Your capacity to remember, to perceive, to be distinctly you, survives the death of the body, because the core of what makes you you was never constructed from degradable physical matter in the first place.
That is profound. The elegance of Al-Waily's synthesis really lies in its rigorous progression.
It's brilliant. He begins by critiquing our shallow mechanical study of psychology, introduces the physics of intellectual particles to solve the epistemological gap,
Maps the conscious and unconscious faculty.
and then logically walks us step by step to a rational framework for human immortality.
And the text anchors this massive intellectual journey with these profound historical quotes that suddenly take on an entirely new literal meaning.
Oh, the quotes are so good. It references Socrates' ancient command, know thyself.
Under Al-Waily's theory, that's no longer just poetic advice about self-awareness. It's a mechanical instruction.
Exactly. You literally cannot decipher the universe until you decipher the lens you are using to view it.
And the text pairs Socrates with the teachings of Imam Ali.
Yes. Imam Ali stated, "Whoever knows himself knows his Lord." The text highlights his praise for the individual who truly understands three foundational things: where they came from, where they are, and where they are going.
And within the framework of the unity of intellectual existence, answering those three existential questions requires a total dissection of the psychology of your own consciousness.
Knowing yourself is quite literally knowing the source code of the universe.
It's incredible. We began this exploration by looking at modern psychology not as the final authority on human behavior, but as a young science that has only really mapped the surface mechanics of the brain.
Right. We established that philosophy has to serve as that hidden root system, feeding the visible branches of science and forcing us to ask what the mind fundamentally is, rather than just categorizing what it does.
We navigated the complexities of epistemology, realizing that to trust our perception of the external world, we have to first study the internal translation process.
And we explored the groundbreaking concept of the unity of intellectual existence, the proposition that the entire universe, down to the single photon, is composed of intellectual particles.
We examined the mind's anatomy, tracing the assembly line of the five conscious faculties, and uncovered the profound reversal of the unconscious, where deep foundational emotions physically manifest as biological instincts.
And the ultimate realization is that understanding our own inner workings logically unlocks the objective nature of beauty and morality while providing this rigorous, physics-based framework for the immortality of the human soul.
There is a deeply practical magic woven into this theory for you to carry forward. Like the next time you feel a sudden, overwhelming surge of joy or catch yourself blushing out of deep embarrassment.
You don't have to write that experience off as just a random biological glitch or a chemical misfire in your neuroanatomy.
Exactly. You can recognize that moment for what Al-Waily argues it truly is, a fundamental intellectual particle of your core being, reacting directly and instantly with the fabric of the cosmos.
Your smallest, most private internal feelings are intimately connected to the grandest scale of universal reality.
It completely reframes your relationship with the world around you. And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you navigate the rest of your day.
Oh, that's a good one.
If Abdul Jabbar Al-Waily's theory of the unity of intellectual existence is accurate, if the entire universe is indeed constructed from intellectual particles scaling all the way down to the subatomic level, does that mean the sunlight hitting your skin right now possesses some tiny, primitive sliver of consciousness?
It's wild to think about.
Next time you step outside and feel the warmth of the sun, remember to think about the lens. We will catch you on the next deep dive.